Regardless of what your program has led you to believe, I am not Sally Mandler. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. Please silence your phones if you have not already done so. My name is Gail Alexander. I'm a member of the board. I have been associated with this congregation for more than 50 years. The Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury has been gathering together for over 200 years. And as we work to build a more just world, we respectfully acknowledge that our physical building is on the traditional land of the Pagusset people. We're glad that you could join us this morning because you're an essential part of our celebration today. Whether today is your first or 1,000th Sunday in our midst, in person or online, we are stronger because of you. If you're new to our community and joining us online, we invite you to introduce yourself and where you're from in the chat box as you are comfortable. At the conclusion of today's service, if you're online, you'll be given an opportunity to participate in a breakout group for more personal connections. And if you're new here in person, please fill out a visitor card at the table near the front entrance before you leave today, and consider staying for a few minutes after the service for coffee and conversation. We're one people of many beliefs, many origins, sexualities, and genders. We're all growing and learning, all loved, just as you are. Welcome here. You will find announcements in your order of service. I just want to point out one in particular, because today we have Pathways to Membership class, and that will be 15 minutes after the service. So if you're new, you're invited to stick around for that and learn about Unitarian Universalism, discover what we here can offer you, and receive some information about membership. No pressure. Once again, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm happy to be here. When I drove this morning coming here, and my husband and I looked out and said, the trees, they're green. It's like an overnight. Did you notice that? I promise you, 2 days ago, we were talking about, I said, pretty soon. And this morning, it's just, okay, it's a drizzly gray day, but look at that green. Pretty amazing. So I am so glad to be here to see that on my way. And it made me think of all the things just bursting forth here and being able to see and be with all of you and those of you online. It is so good to have you joining us, albeit virtually, but you are there. We know you are there, and we are so happy to have you with us. Also, so great to have those who may be visiting with us today, or perhaps you've been here before but haven't been in a while. And we are glad that you've chosen to come and spend this hour with us on this day. So let's take a moment. It is good to remind each other that we're happy to be here, that we're happy to see one another, because that is what religious community is about. That is why we are here, is to come together in community, in support, and to work together for justice. It's that together part. So what better way than to start saying hello to those online? You can see us. We can't see you, but we know you are there. Good morning to you. Please greet one another in the chat during this time. For all of the rest of us, maybe you stay in your seat, but maybe you see someone you haven't seen. Make an effort to say hello. So let us continue with this conviviality and welcome and greeting one another after the service. I do hope that you will stick around for a few moments, especially those of you who may be new. We are so fortunate to have Annie and Inga who show up here almost every single Sunday morning. They come early to get coffee going and get the kitchen set up so that we can have a time of enjoying a cup with each other. We appreciate you. And so please stick around for a few moments if you can, so that we have more time together to greet and to speak with one another. Right now, let's rise and embody your spirit as you are able, and let's sing together our hymn of welcome. It is in the soft-covered hymnal that some of you will have on your chair. The words will be up on the screen, and it is number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. Thank you. That was beautiful. Thank you for that. So I'd like to invite our service coordinator, Sally, to come and lead us in our chalice lighting words. And we'd like to invite Chris McCartney to come and light the chalice. Chris has been a part of the congregation a couple of years before actually becoming a member, and we're coming up on 10 years, or maybe even just over 10 years. And you may recognize Chris from the many times that she sings with the choir and provides solos and the most gorgeous music. And you may not know, though, that Chris also actually enjoys working with the youth, most specifically going to cons, which are the conferences, where they pretty much stay up all night and create all kinds of interesting havoc. So we so appreciate the fact that Chris likes to do that and has done that on behalf of this community in the past, and has even brought her own college student, Zoe, to be a part of the choir. So musical family and Chris, for your gifts to this congregation, we are deeply grateful. Thank you. Let us light the chalice.
Join me, please. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another, and celebrate life.
Our Director of Religious Education, Sierra Marie Gerfeo, is not here today, so I am stepping in, and I am excitedly going to lead us in our children's affirmation. And most of you here will know the hand motions, and the rest you can just follow along. Are we ready? We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. We care for the earth and each other. Thank you. And so I've chosen to share a story, and we do have some young ones here today, and we may have some online, but we tell a story for all to listen to, for the child within you, and as a reminder to us that we are a multi-generational community. And we may not see children on Sunday mornings, as they'll be coming this afternoon and this evening for special classes, but we hold them in our hearts at all times because we are creating a future for them here at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. This morning's story is called The Most Magnificent Thing by Ashley Spires. And it's about a regular girl, just a regular girl, and her best friend in the whole world, her dog. And I think I saw a really cool stuffy dog a little while ago, and it reminded me of this story. Now, these two did all kinds of things together. You know, they race, they eat, they explore, they relax. She makes things, he unmakes things. But one day, the girl had a wonderful idea. She was going to make the most magnificent thing. She knows just how it's going to look, and she knows just how it's going to work. All she has to do is make it, and she makes things all the time. Easy peasy. So she and her best friend, they gather their supplies and they set up somewhere outside, a little out of the way. And the girl tinkers and hammers and measures while her assistant pounces and growls and chews. And when she's finished, she steps back and admires her work. But it doesn't look right. Her assistant gives it a shake, and it doesn't feel right either. They're surprised to find it isn't magnificent. It's all wrong. So the girl tosses it aside, gives it another go. She smooths and wrenches and fiddles while her assistant circles and tugs and wags. And when she's finished, she stands up. She takes a long look. It's still wrong. It's not right. And so she decides to try again and again and again. And the girl saws and glues and adjusts. She stands, she examines, she stares, she twists, she tweaks, she fastens, she fixes, she straightens, she studies. She tries all different ways to make it better. She made it square. She made it round. She gave it legs. She gave it antenna. She made it fuzzy. She made it long. She made it short, rough, smooth, big, small, and one even smelled of stinky cheese. But none of them were magnificent. Her hard work did attract a few admirers walking by on the sidewalk, but they don't understand. They can't see the magnificent thing she has in her mind, and she gets mad. The angrier she gets, the faster she works. She smashes pieces into shapes. She jams parts together. She pummels little bits in. Her hands feel too big to work, and her brain is just too full of not right things. If only these things could just work. Crunch. Oh, the pain starts in her finger and rushes up to her brain, and she explodes. It is not one of her finest moments. I'm no good at this. I quit. Her assistant suggests they take a walk. It's not much help at first, but before long, she starts to feel different. Bit by bit, the mad gets pushed out of her head. And as they stroll along, she comes up to that first thing that she made, the first wrong piece. And the bad feelings, oh, they're about to start all over again. But she notices something surprising. there are some parts of that wrong thing that actually are quite right. The bolts on one and then the shape of another. There are all sorts of parts that she likes. And by the time she reaches the end of the trail of wrong things, she knows how to make the thing magnificent. She gets to work, but this time she works carefully. She works slowly. She works mindfully, tinkering, hammering, twisting, fiddling, gluing, painting. And the afternoon fades into the evening, and she finally finishes. She alerts her assistant, and the pair stand back. They take a good, long look. Leans a little to the left. Yeah, it's a little heavier than expected. The color could use a bit of work too, but it's just what she wanted. So they climb aboard and they take it for a spin, and they are not disappointed. You see, it's not perfect, but it really is a magnificent thing. And this ends the story. Also, in honor of the children that are here today, that may be watching from home, that will be here later, we sing, holding them in our hearts. Let us sing This Little Light of Mine. This little light,
I'm gonna let it shine.
this little light,
I'm gonna let it shine.
this little light,
I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine.
Let's take a breath together. Breathe in this beautiful day, this time together, and then exhale. Let go of what you have brought here that is weighing on you. Take another one. A collective breath together, and exhale. Let us share with each other the milestones of our lives. We begin by sharing those deep joys and great sorrows, those heavy concerns that we carry. We begin by sharing those in silence, because there are some milestones that we are not ready to share aloud, but we want to acknowledge them in community. Those of you online, I hope that you will search your hearts for the milestones that are with you today. Those of you here, as we hear the soft music start, please come forward and choose a stone on the chancel table. That is the symbol of your milestone today. And just drop it in the bowl. And we will move from there into spoken milestones. But it is good for us to start in a time of quiet and reflection with silent milestones. Something shared here may have triggered something in yourself, and you realize, wow, I'm carrying something here. So breathe and let it go for just a moment. Let's spend a moment in silence together, and let's hold what has been shared here. Whether you know the person speaking or not is not what's important. Hold what has been shared. We can celebrate the accomplishments of our children, the good health of our grandchildren, birthdays, anniversaries. And we can also hold others in concern about the uncertainty of what will happen a week from now, a year from now. Our children, those we love, those in our community. Join me in silent reflection.
with gratitude for all that is our life. Let's remain in this spirit of reflection and sacred community as we sing together our hymn of reflection. The words will be printed there. Loving kindness. We'll sing, may I be filled, then may you be filled, and lastly, may we be filled with loving kindness.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we whole.
Now is the time in our service when we collect the weekly offering. If today is your first or second time with us, please pass the actual or virtual plate. Your gift to this congregation is your presence. For the rest of us, I ask that you reflect on what you hope to get from services, loving kindness for sure. Do you leave with a full heart, with something to consider, something to mull over? Please consider these things as you give generously to support this meaningful and loving community. Thank you.
I don't usually get very wonky in my messages. I may be a little wonky today.
So I'm going to ask you to indulge me. And it may be that those who are here for the first or second time, this may not be what you were expecting, but I'm actually really glad you're here because it's important for you to know more about us and where we are and what is happening with Unitarian Universalism in this congregation. And that's what today is all about. It's about relevance. So I had to actually look up the definition of relevance to be sure I knew what I was talking about. And one dictionary definition of relevance is the quality or state of being closely connected. Oh, I like that. And then another one said when something is relevant, it matters. Wow, I like that even better. And then I read one definition that said relevant means being the kind of person on whom others depend, whether for leadership, expertise, or support. Because when you are relevant, you are valued. But we're not talking about you and I as individuals being relevant. Today, we are talking about religion, and specifically this beloved community, being relevant in this 21st century, in this time that we find ourselves in. I mean, I would love for us to be the kind of congregation on whom others out in the wider community depend on for leadership, for support, for us to be seen as a relevant community in Danbury and beyond, for Unitarian Universalism to be seen as a relevant, wider community in the world. Well, French sociologist, some of you may be familiar with Émile Durkheim. Has anybody heard of Émile Durkheim? Many, many, many moons ago, came up with these 4 reasons for religion or functions of religion. And it may seem strange I'm bringing up this French sociologist who made these thoughts 100 years ago, and I'm talking about relevancy. But with a tiny little tweak, I do believe that these thoughts are relevant for us today. Reasons for or functions of religion. First, religion may give, this is my tweak, it's not an absolute, may give meaning and purpose to people's lives. Because aren't there a lot of things in life that are just almost impossible to understand? Yes, no, maybe so. Yeah, okay, I'm not the only one. Whew. You know, that was certainly true in past times, right? People didn't understand even the simplest of things, and science has helped us so much in understanding and discovering. But even in today's highly scientific age, even in today's society with all the technology that we have, so much remains a mystery. It's a mystery. And religious faith may be able to help people in circling around about these mysteries, about these uncertainties, about these difficulties. Second, religion has the potential to reinforce social unity and stability. And that was one of Durkheim's most important insights. Religion can strengthen some social stability by giving people a common set of values. For us, values. Don't worry about beliefs right now. Let's just talk about values. A common core of values that we can come together around, that we come here on a Sunday, that we gather together. We bring our strength and we gain strength, and we reinforce our unity and stability. Religious faith and practice can enhance psychological well-being by being a source of comfort in times of distress. Anybody here that's been around this congregation found this place as a source of comfort when you were in a time of distress? If you're willing to raise your hand. Wow. And finally, religion has the potential to motivate people to work for positive social change. We see it. We see it when members of this community go down to Dorothy Day Hospitality House, when we make meals for those who don't have any, when we serve those people. Religion played a central role in the development of the Southern Civil Rights Movement. It was the religious values that motivated Martin Luther King Jr. and all the other civil rights activists to risk their lives. It is the values of Unitarian Universalism that propelled many of us to protest and to work for marriage equality, not only in Connecticut, but in this nation. But is religion really relevant in 2023? Is it? That was an answer of some sort. I'm asking, is it relevant in 2023? Yes. Okay. Well, in December of 2022, you may have seen a story on NPR, because we Unitarian Universalists love our NPR. And there was a story about churches changing to stay relevant. Because since the pandemic, attendance was dropping before that, but since the pandemic, whoa, huge dips in attendance. So churches, these particular churches, some in Tennessee, were changing in order to stay relevant. And in Knoxville, Tennessee, even today, on a Sunday morning, you will find small groups sitting around a fire pit in a community garden. And the minister, by the name of Reverend Battle, he walked away from more than 30 years of leading Black Baptist churches there. And he decided to turn his attention to a farm and a garden where they grow vegetables. The members of this community grow vegetables, and then they sell them at a farmer's market, collect all unsold produce from around the city, and they deliver it to people in public housing once a week. That is church. That is religion. He did that because he found that traditional church attendance was in a steep decline, especially among millennials and Gen Z. And he knew there was a need to experiment with new ways of offering meaning in people's lives. He said, and I quote, "We're trying to create this community where people can learn to love each other and ultimately love and transform the world. We're doing it through collard greens and okra." A Methodist minister in East Tennessee said that his congregation realized that they had better do a better job of connecting with the community. So they too collect unsold produce from all the local vendors. And then once a month, they bring it back to their church parking lot and they give it away. So word has gotten out. Wow, here is this place that we can go, and they are giving it. They are serving the community. That is religion. Other churches still have their Sunday programs in the morning, but they open up in the evenings to less formal gatherings. They're having meditation circles. They're having book groups. And it turns out the people attending there are not coming on Sunday morning, but they are getting their needs met. Reverend Battle says the question used to be, how can the church change the culture? I remember hearing that. Do you remember hearing that? Oh, we've got to change the culture. And you know what the question is now, according to Reverend Battle? How are we going to change the church? How are we going to be relevant to the needs of the people? Are we relevant? Is the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Danbury relevant today? Does Unitarian Universalism matter? Do we matter in the wider community? Are we willing to meet the challenge of becoming more relevant? Boy, that's the question. Are we willing to meet the challenge? And where do we start? My colleague here in Connecticut, Josh Pollock, said to his congregation, imagine that someone who is completely unfamiliar with Unitarian Universalism asks you to tell them about your faith, your religion, your church, that place on the ridge. They say, what is it? Well, wait a second. You mean you don't share a common creed? You mean you don't share the same exact beliefs? So what holds you together? What holds Unitarian Universalists together? What would you say? Anyone? Okay. My colleague tends to think that more than likely, many people would say, oh, something I find on the back of my order of service. These are called the principles and purposes, and the sources from which we draw. Any of you think of that? Is that something you've ever used before? When they say, oh, but you don't have anything to hold you together. Well, we have our principles and purposes. Our principles come the closest to unifying us. But as another colleague said, only a black belt UU could really properly and correctly recite all 7 of them. And we've adopted an 8th. But I think most of us know the very first one, yes? We covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. I think that's the hardest one of all. That first one is so hard because we have to feel our way into whether we need to see as worthy everything about a person or just maybe that teensy tiny little spark of something divine in there. And we can have people, you know, who seem just as rigid and judgmental as the biblical Pharisees themselves about being sensitive in our language and affirming differences, which reminds me of the light bulb joke. You know that one. How many Unitarian Universalists does it take to change a light bulb? Any guesses?
One. We've got to discuss it.
We choose not to make a statement, either in favor or against the light bulb. However, if you have found in your own journey that light bulbs work for you, that's fine. You're invited to write a poem or perhaps compose a modern dance about your personal relationship with your light bulb. And you can present it next month at our annual Light Bulb Sunday service, in which we will explore a number of light bulb traditions, including incandescent and fluorescent, 3-way, lifelong, tinted, all of which are equally valid paths to luminescence. You see, our principles are aspirational. To live them well is difficult. We often miss the mark, and so we keep trying, like the girl, right? We keep trying. As members and friends of this congregation, as Unitarian Universalists, we have an ongoing invitation, a daily invitation to understand and explore and live those principles. They inhabit a space at the center of who we are. And this is the one place where, as Unitarian Universalists, we are beginning to meet the challenge of relevancy. And that means change. You may have seen in a recent article in the magazine UU World that in 1981, and I can't believe, how long ago was that? Like 40 years? I thought it was yesterday. That's when I graduated high school. In 1981, the Unitarian Universalist Association, that big umbrella organization, formed a committee. Surprise, surprise. But formed a committee to examine the principles and purposes because they're stated actually in the bylaws of the association. It's called Article 2 of the bylaws. Because you see, the principles and purposes had been created 20 years earlier. They'd first been created in 1961 when there was the consolidation of the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America. That's when we became UUs. And that is when those first principles and purposes were put out. Now, the language, as you might imagine, from 1961 was gendered, and it really felt dated. So a group of 5 Unitarian Universalists, a couple of those were clergy and the others were lay leaders, they set out to create a new statement of Unitarian Universalist values. And they got input from thousands of Unitarian Universalists all across the country. And in 1984, at the annual General Assembly of the denomination, the delegates there overwhelmingly voted in favor of the new bylaws, which came to include 7 principles and purposes and 5 sources. And those have remained largely unchanged for 4 decades. Now, there's a 6th source. So some of you may be saying, hey, wait a second. That 6th source, drawing from earth-centered religions, was added in 1995. Final approval for what you see today in our order of service was granted in 1985, because according to the bylaws, any change requires approval at 2 consecutive General Assembly conventions. Here we are today. Buckle your seatbelts. 3 years ago, in the spring of 2020, the Unitarian Universalist Association's Board of Trustees created an Article 2 study commission. And this is what they charged it with. I quote, to review Article 2 of the bylaws and propose any revisions that will enable our Unitarian Universalist Association, our member congregations, and our covenanted communities to be a relevant and powerful force for spiritual and moral growth, healing, and justice. In June, just 2 months from now, at the General Assembly in Pittsburgh, delegates, including those from this congregation, will vote on proposed revisions to Article 2. And if that new version receives a simple majority vote, then they'll have a final vote the following year in 2024. There's going to be a link in an upcoming email that all of you will receive where you can view the 26-page report. I know you're dying to read all 26 pages, but I want to give you a little heads up. There are 2, you may call them glaring absences from this proposal. The proposal has no list of principles. And no principles, no list of 7 principles, and has no list of sources. Sherry, if you could bring up the slide for us. This, in a nutshell, is what we are looking at. And I want newcomers who are here today to also know about this. You see an image of a chalice with an overlay of the word love over the flame. You can see 6 outstretched arms that create a circle around each of the core values. And it forms this 6-petal flower shape. Each arm is a different color, And you can see clockwise: interdependence, equity, transformation, pluralism, generosity, and justice. Interdependence. The writing is, we honor the interdependent web of all existence. We covenant to cherish Earth and all beings by creating and nurturing relationships of care and respect. With humility and reverence, we acknowledge our place in the great web of life, and we work to repair harm and damaged relationships. Pluralism. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. Justice. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive, democratic processes to make decisions. Transformation. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete, never perfect. Generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, our presence, our resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. And equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. Thank you, Sherry. For the sources, it will now be called inspirations. As Unitarian Universalists, we use and are inspired by sacred and secular understandings that help us live into our values. We respect the histories, the contexts, and the cultures in which they were created and are currently practiced. You may not see this as it is in the future on the back of this order of service. This is a change. We are moving from principles and purposes to a set of core values. Now, I feel pretty confident in saying that a majority of us who are Unitarian Universalists, we became so after 1985. If you consider yourself a Unitarian Universalist and you became so after 1985, could you just raise your hand? Okay, that is the vast majority. So the 7 principles have been the only center we've known. And for those of you who were Unitarian Universalists prior to 1985, how many do we have? We do have, look at this. You've lived with these 7 principles for nearly 40 years. They have lived in us. So yes, we will experience grief. We will experience a sense of loss. It may feel strange referring to values rather than principles. It may feel strange referring to inspirations rather than sources. And it will take time for us to meet the challenge of relevancy that comes about through change. While those current principles and sources are cherished by many, one of those 5 I told you about in 1981 who worked on that iteration, Reverend Diane Miller, she wants us to understand, as she said, they were not given on tablets on a mountaintop. They emerged from a small group of dedicated Unitarian Universalists in living memory with tremendous input from Unitarian Universalist members and leaders and congregational meetings and clergy. And how glad I am, she says, to see these core statements and values being widely examined again. Miller knows that some of us may not be enthusiastic about changing Article 2, either because we really love that current version, or we might feel, how is this a pressing issue now? With all going on in the world, why are we focusing on this? Those were the same objections that she faced 40 years ago. Some things don't change. The same things. Oh, our present statement has served us so well for 20 years. Why should we tamper with it? That's what we hear today. This shouldn't be a top priority. This is going to create divisiveness and confusion. Same arguments today. I'm going to tell you, you might not see everything you like in that final version. Just like the girl making the magnificent thing. But to engage with it, to not put your head in the sand, but to engage with it is to really ask, what are we about? What are we about in 2023? Because those principles were never intended to last forever. There's nothing sacred about that number 7. There was nothing sacred about the specific wording. And in fact, they are supposed to be revised on a regular basis. Because that is what is true of progressive religion. We embrace change, we reinvent ourselves, we adapt to better respond to the unique circumstances of our historical era. We evolve because as much as we honor the ancient traditions, we do not cling to them. Let me repeat that. As much as we honor the ancient traditions, think about this in your own life. We do not cling to them. There is wisdom in our willingness and our ability to change, to tinker and fiddle and smooth and study, to stand back and take a long look and be willing to try again to create the magnificent thing. Because our willingness and our ability to change is what keeps us healthy. It's what keeps us vibrant and fresh as a religious movement over the long run. It's what keeps us open to the reality revelation is never sealed. There are always new truths to be discovered. There are always new relationships to build, new insights to gain. And you know what? Change is good. Even if you're feeling a little like George Carlin, and my favorite quote, just when I discovered the meaning of life, they changed it. As another of my colleagues notes, anytime we ask language to articulate our purpose, the things that really matter, we will confront a dilemma. Because no words can ever truly capture what we really mean. And yet that's what we have. We have words. So we do our best with the words we have, knowing they will likely be inadequate. Because there's something deeper. There is something more enduring to our faith than the limited and very human words that we use to describe it. You know, 200 years ago, I don't know the exact words they used. I could look it up in our archives. And generations to come after us, they're not going to care about the words that we chose to use. They will not remember those words. What they will do is remember how we lived. That's what they will remember. How did we live? How were we relevant? How were we willing to meet the challenge of change? The 7 principles will not be lost. They will always be a part of our heritage. But we have to reach for a theology of our time. There is a need for religious communities that help give meaning and purpose to life, that reinforce social unity, that offer a source of comfort in times of distress, and that can motivate people to work for positive social change. When we are relevant, we matter. And we will matter to the wider community. I know this requires change that is uncomfortable. It's unfamiliar. It's uncertain. It is not easy peasy. But the advice that Reverend Diane Miller gives us, I would say loosen up. Enjoy it. Relish the fact that you get to have a part in this process of a new direction. And now that the commission has completed all of their work and they put the proposed revisions in front of us, we will stand. We'll take a long look. It's leaning a little to the left, isn't it? I think it's a little heavier than we expected it to be. The color, whew, boy, that could use some work too. But if we approach it with loving kindness, if we approach it with a commitment to meeting that challenge of becoming relevant, we can climb aboard together. Come with me. Let's take it for a spin. Because we might find that while it is not perfect, it really is a most magnificent thing. And may it be so. So let us extinguish our chalice. Sally, would you come and lead us in the words?
Join me, please. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again.
You may have thought that I forgot to light this extra candle on the table, but I really was saving it for the end because I want to light this as a reminder of all those who have worked so hard to bring us to relevancy in the Unitarian Universalist Association, all those who worked on revising Article 2, and in the hopes that all of us will approach these revisions and this change with loving kindness. Would you join me rising one last time in body or spirit as you are able, and let us sing together our hymn of celebration. It's 1017. Words are on the screen. What a perfect song, Building a New Way.
We are
I share with you these closing words from my colleague Eric Wickstrom. If you are who you were, and if the person next to you is who he or she or they were, if none of us has changed since the day we came in here, we have failed. We failed. Because the purpose of this community, of any church, temple, zendo, mosque, is to help people grow. We do this through encounters with the unknown in ourselves, in one another, with the other, whoever that might be for us, however hard that might be, because these encounters have gifts to offer, and they offer us a gift of change. So may you go forth from here this morning, not who you were, but who you could be. And so may we all. Amen. Shalom. Salam. Blessed be to each and to all. Namaste.